Hello, and welcome to today's webinar, Patient Perspectives on Clinical Trial Participation. My name is Hope Newport. I'm the IFOPA Family Services Manager. We are going to introduce some of our wonderful panelists in just a moment, but I am going to turn it over to Michelle Davis, Executive Director, to get us started.
Hello, and thank you so much for being with us here today. We are really excited to share with you about the clinical trial opportunities that are available for our FOP community. You know, we're really in a very unique position, and we're glad to share with you more about the different ways that you can support clinical trial research. I just came back from the Global Genes Patient Advocacy Summit, which is a meeting of families with rare and genetic diseases from around the world. And there are also people there that are running organizations that support these families. And the consistent theme that you hear over and over again as you meet people is that they're just hopeful that the gene that caused their disease will be discovered, and that biotech and pharmaceutical companies will be interested enough to develop drugs for their disease. Well, that is a situation that fortunately we don't have at the IFOPA. In 2006, the gene mutation that causes FOP was discovered. And in the 16 years since that discovery, there has been a flurry of work to develop drugs for FOP. You can see some of that work that's outlined here. You can see from the natural history study that was started in 2014 to the very first phase 2 trials, that now here in green, you can see the active FOP clinical trials. And you can see that we've also been blessed. We hope that you've heard that last year in Canada and the UAE, and that this year in the US, that one of the drugs that has come through these trials has actually been approved. So it really leaves us with a unique opportunity to learn about all that we can do to participate in these clinical trials. So this is taken from an editorial that the International Clinical Council on FOP wrote about this unique situation that we're in. And we're really in a situation where we're between a world of symptomatic management, how we've always managed FOP, to a world where the idea and the possibilities of therapies is really right at our doorstep. The thing to remember throughout this process, as blessed as we are to have so many clinical trials, is that these clinical trials are not proven treatments. They truly are human experiments that are going to be used to determine if a drug is safe and effective in treating FOP. And they're guided by the best knowledge that was available when the trial was designed. So there is definitely theoretical benefit, believed benefit, and there's also real risk. And those are spelled out in the informed consent that's given to you when you start pursuing to participate in a clinical trial. So this is a great point where I'm going to talk about a new resource that the IFOPA has. It's called the FOP Glossary. And the FOP Glossary is a way for you to learn more about words and terms that you might see, especially in the drug development world, that are maybe not so clear to you or you might want to learn more about. So here's a great example that when you go to the glossary, you can find a definition of informed consent. So the informed consent is a way that you are provided with information to allow you to make the best decision possible about whether or not you're going to participate in a clinical study or trial. When you sign an informed consent, you're confirming that you understand the risks and the benefits, and you agree to the requirements of the study trial. Every trial that you participate in should provide you an informed consent. We are going to be talking about the various phases that clinical trials are in. So I thought it was just a good reminder to share this slide from the US Food and Drug Administration. So clinical trials typically happen in 3 phases. The first phase is where they bring a drug to healthy people. So the people with the disease that the drug is proposed for don't even take the drug yet. In the first phase, it's only healthy participants to make sure the drug is safe, learn what the side effects are, and how does the drug work in the body. In phase 2, which many of our trials are in currently, that is the first time that a drug is given to people with the disease. And we're checking for, is the drug safe again? How effective how much of the drug should be taken, and how often. And then phase 3 is where many clinical trials then progress to. And again, we're looking, is the drug safe? How effective is the drug? And is there a benefit or risk to the population? Occasionally, drugs will have such wonderful results in phase 2 that they'll go ahead and make application. The drug company will make application for approval. But most of the time, what we've seen so far in FOP is that all of the trials have progressed on to a phase 3. Then after the phase 3, that's when it's reviewed by regulators in each country. That's the key point. Regulators in each country must review the drug before it's approved in that country. So we're going to talk about the trials, and you're going to see what we call a trial status. And I wanted to just make sure that was clear to you what those are. So you may see a status that says a trial is not yet recruiting. That means a trial is planned at this site. It means that they're going through all of the approvals at that institution, but it's not yet open to patients for screening. Then you may see that a trial is recruiting, and that means they're looking for people with FOP, and they're going to screen you to see if you can enroll. And the decision at the end is absolutely yours to make. And then the last status that you may see is active, not recruiting. And that means that the trial is still active, it's running, but they're no longer recruiting patients. So here is a chart. I mentioned earlier that we're blessed to have many drugs in clinical trials for FOP. And this is a chart that really shows you where those drugs are in the process. So many of you know that have heard of the drug palovarotene. It's a drug by the pharmaceutical company Gibson. They do have a rollover trial for anyone that was in the MOVE trial, which was the phase 3 trial. It is active and not recruiting. So this one is not available to anyone at this time to enroll in. The next drug that is in phase 3 is garetosmab, and it is made by the pharmaceutical company Regeneron, and it is recruiting. The next is the company Incyte. They also have a phase 2 trial. We'll talk more about each of these in a few minutes. It's recruiting. Ipsen has a second drug, and this is in a phase 2 trial, and you'll see here that it's recruiting. There was a phase 2 trial started several years ago by a company by Kyoto University for rapamycin, and they have completed the phase 2 trial, but they have not published the results. So there are no results at this time, and that does occasionally happen, and we want you to be aware that that does happen sometimes. And so that is the result there. We don't really know what's going to be the next step for rapamycin. Saracatinib is a trial that's running in Europe. It's nearly full. They have some space where they might be able to recruit 2 more people in Europe, but that is only in close consultation with the trial team. And then you'll see this. There are drugs that do the phase 1 trial for FOP. They are a drug to treat FOP. They do the phase 1 in healthy humans. And then for a variety of reasons, the pharmaceutical company may decide to stop developing the drug. They may have found something in the phase 1 study that makes them decide to stop. Many of you may have seen last year a press release from BioCryst Pharmaceuticals. BioCryst has a similar drug to the Incyte trial, the Ipsen trial, and the StopThought trial. And they said that for now, there are 3 kinase inhibitors that are being tested in FOP. And they felt like if they were to add a 4th, that it would make it less likely that all of the clinical trials would be able to fill with patients. And so they decided to step back. They still hold their drug. It's sitting on a shelf. They're not selling it. They're not ending the program, but they're just currently stopping their pursuit of a drug treatment for FOP. And then there is another drug company, Keros Therapeutics, that did a phase 1 trial in healthy humans. And after they finished their phase 1 trial, it is for FOP, but then also for anemia. They just decided to start a phase 2 trial for anemia patients. So they're not moving forward with FOP at this time. So we'll give you a quick regulatory approval update. Many of you have seen the exciting news over the last 2 years about the drug that many of us know as palovarotene capsules. It now has a new name. Sojonos is its name as an approved drug. It was approved in 2022 by Health Canada. The United Arab Emirates has a policy that if a drug is approved in another country, that they will give provisional approval to that drug in the UAE. And so that's the situation there. In July of 2023, we know it was very disappointing news for many in Europe that the European Commission decided not to grant marketing authorization to palovarotene as a treatment for FOP. But in August of this year, the FDA decided to approve it. There is regulatory approval being sought in other countries, but that list is not publicly available. One thing that we do think is important for people to know is that if you are on Sojonos as an approved drug, that means you cannot participate in another clinical trial. And why is that? Well, in the clinical trials that we just saw, they're trying to determine if their drugs work. And we want to really know the specifics, really look at just that drug and make sure that drug works. If you were on Sojonos and also in a clinical trial, we wouldn't know, is it the Sojonos helping you or the drug that we're testing in that trial? So that's why you have to not be on another drug like Sojonos if you're in one of these other trials. So who can take Sojonos? In Canada and the US and the UAE, where it has provisional approval, females aged 8 and up and males aged 10 and up can take it. And there is a full label with all of the safety information that is available for each of you and your physicians to read. It will describe to you some safety risks and why they have limited the ages to 8 and up and 10 and up. So this example, I know this is a really long link to look at. This is an example of something that will be on YouTube in the description that you can access after the webinar. So here's another time to think about the FOP glossary, and that's what's the label. So the label is something that the regulatory agency creates. It's a list of the diseases a medication can be prescribed for. And for each disease, it has the ages that can take it, the dosing amount, how you take the drug, how often, and safety information. So you definitely want, you and your physician always want to look at the label for a drug. So there are resources that are available to those that are interested in taking Sojonos. And these resources I'm going to share first are for people that are living in the United States. So if you're living in the United States and you meet the age criteria and you're interested in learning more about Sojonos or having your physician learn more, there are two programs. One is called IPS and Cares, and that is, you can see a screenshot of that page here, and the kinds of information that's listed: prescribing information, safety information, patient, educational program information. You must have had a doctor write a prescription for you to enroll in IPS and Cares. You can go to the website and look around, but if you want access to a patient access manager or the patient education liaison, you must have a script in order to enroll in the IPS and Cares program. The patient access manager is going to help you navigate the process of getting Sojonos paid for by your insurance company or Medicare or Medicaid or TRICARE if that's what you're on. The patient education liaison is to help you if you have questions about the drug or FOP as you move through that journey. There is also a website called Sojonos.com, which is purely a medical information website that you may want to share with your physician. There are resources for people who are outside of the United States. And one is ipsenmedicalinformation.com. You can see that when you come to this website, that you pick the region of the world in which you live, and then you can submit questions for response from Ipsen on this website. And again, you also, outside of the US, you do have access to look at the label and learn more about the drug as well. So I showed you the drug development chart, and we saw that there are clinical trials available. There are 4 clinical trials that are currently recruiting. And these are the countries where those trials are currently have locations that are open and recruiting. Now, It's not all of the trials. It may be one, it may be one or two. Some countries have all 4 trials that are going to be available in them. But if you see your country on this list, I'm going to show you a little bit later on ways to find information about the trial that is open and available to you. So there are trial locations that are planned but are not currently recruiting. So you'll see those here. So this means that today there is not a trial open and recruiting in your country, but one is coming. There will be additional trial locations added to this list. So make sure you are watching the IFOPA's social media. When those trial sites open, we post about it. And that you are signed up for a new resource that we have called Clinical Trial Alerts. This will be a special email that will come out to you when there are announcements to be made about clinical trials. Maybe there's a new trial site that's open. Maybe there's an announcement from the company about the trial. So you will see it will always have the name in the subject line, FOP Clinical Trial Alert, so you know to pay special attention to those emails. So who can participate in a trial? One of the things you're going to be hearing about is something called inclusion criteria. And these are characteristics that a person must have in order to participate in a trial. So it might be that you have clinical or genetic confirmation of having FOP. It might be that you have to be of a certain age, a gender, a health status. We'll talk about some inclusion criteria for the FOP clinical trials in a moment. You'll also see in the descriptions of the clinical trial something called exclusion criteria. These are reasons why a person can't participate in a clinical trial. Maybe the drug maker has said if you have another condition that you can't participate in the trial. So those are the exclusion criteria are just as important as the inclusion criteria. One other thing we want you to be aware of is something called washout period. Sometimes people will finish one trial and they'll decide to go into another trial. There might be a case where someone has been maybe they were in the palovarotene trial and that has ended and they'd like to enter another trial. So there's amount of time it takes the medicine to be eliminated from your body. So you'll see that many clinical trials require a washout period. We want to make sure all of the old drug is gone before you're eligible to enroll in a new trial. Okay, so we're going to start and we're going to work backwards. We're going to start with the trials that are furthest along in the development process. So we're going to start with what's known as the Optima Trial. This is a phase 3 clinical trial from the drug maker Regeneron. You might remember that there was the Lumina 1 phase 2 trial. That trial has ended. This is a new trial that was approved by the FDA. So they are testing a drug that is actually given by infusion. It's called garetosmab. This trial is open to anyone who is over 18 years old. You need to have had disease activity within 1 year of your screening visit. And in this trial, they can take someone with the classic or variant mutations of the disease. There are additional inclusion/exclusion criteria, and you will find that here at clinicaltrials.gov. They are looking to enroll 66 patients. There is a placebo arm in this trial. So this would have been a good opportunity for me to put up the definition of placebo from the glossary. So the placebo is something that is not the drug. It looks similar to the drug. So if you're taking a pill in the trial, the placebo is a pill. If you are getting an infusion in a trial, the placebo is going to come by infusion. We have to give the drug to some people in the trial, and some people we give a placebo so that we can determine what's the difference. Is the drug making a difference? So in this trial, there will be 3 arms. People will either be on high dose garetosmab, low dose garetosmab, or on placebo. And then you can see the length of the trial here. And then there are additional places that you can go to for more information. You can go to the trial website that's been set up by Regeneron. You can go to clinicaltrials.gov. we created an easy way for you to get to clinicaltrials.gov. So you go to ifopa.org/Optima, and you can get straight to clinicaltrials.gov for this trial. And then we also have information on our website. Again, all of this information will be on YouTube after the webinar is posted. So the next trial is the StopThought phase 2 clinical trial. They are testing a drug called saracatinib, which is a kinase inhibitor, and it's an oral capsule. You have to be over 18, but under 65 to participate in this trial. There's no restrictions on disease activity. This trial does require that you have the classic mutation. And there's, of course, additional inclusion-exclusion criteria. They are looking for 20 people in this trial. And you are on a placebo. If you enter this trial, you are on a placebo for 6 months. And then for the next 12 months, you would be on saracatinib. So the total trial participation length is 18 months. And again, there is a website created by the trial. There's a redirect to clinicaltrials.gov. And then we also have information on the IFOPA's website. An important note, this trial is only being conducted in Europe. It was funded by the European Union, and so that's why it's only available to people that live in Europe. The trial sites are in Germany, Amsterdam, and in London. It may be some opportunity if you live somewhere close that you could travel into one of those sites. So if you're interested in this trial, you definitely want to contact the trial investigators. So the next is a phase 2 trial called FALCON that was started by this drug came several years ago from a company called Blueprint Medicines, and it was acquired by Gibson. So the drug now has a new name. The new name is fidresertib is the name of the drug. It is also a kinase inhibitor, an oral capsule. In this trial, right now to enroll, you need to be over 15 years of age. The goal of the trial is to expand it and to allow patients 5 years and older, but we're not at the place yet in the trial where children can be added. There is a great amount of safety data that has to be established and reviewed by the regulatory agencies before they will allow Ipsen to start accepting children at the age of 5 and up. So it's important that we continue to focus on the 15-year-olds, knowing that there's a goal to hopefully later be able to bring this to younger children. Again, in this trial, participants must have disease progression in the preceding year of the screening visit. This trial also takes people with the classic or variant mutations, and there are additional exclusion and exclusion criteria. In this trial, they need to enroll 98 patients. And this also is a placebo-controlled trial. So similar to the Regeneron trial, you might be on placebo or a high dose or a low dose. In this trial, after the first 12 months, then everyone receives 48 months of drug. So again, you'll see here at the bottom, and we'll post this on YouTube, that there is a trial website, that there's a redirect to clinicaltrials.gov, and information on the IFOPA's website. And the last trial that we're going to talk about is the Progress phase 2 trial. And this trial was started by the drug maker Incyte. Incyte has a new drug. I am not even going to, I wish I knew exactly how to say it, Zelargus or Tibid, I think is how you say it, but it's a mouthful. So we call it the Progress trial, and that's probably the best way to refer to it with your physicians. This trial does accept children ages 12 and up. So for families with teens, younger teens, or almost teenagers, this trial is available to you. You do have to have signs and symptoms associated with FOP flare-ups, maybe worsening joint function or new HO that has been happening recently. And this trial will also take people with the classic or variant mutations. And again, there will be additional inclusion-exclusion criteria that you're going to discuss with your physician. We are going to, in this trial, we need to enroll 60 patients, and patients, again, will be randomized to the drug or to placebo for 24 weeks. And then after that, patients will receive the drug for 52 weeks. On this one, we have just a redirect to clinicaltrials.gov, and then we also have information on the IFOPA website. Okay, so with that, I am going to now turn it over to Hope. We've talked to you a lot about there's so many choices. And so now Hope is going to walk you through some discussions with people living with FOP who have been participating in clinical trials. And they're going to talk a little bit about how they've made decisions and how they've navigated life with FOP and all of the other things that they do while also participating in a clinical trial. They're not going to talk about the specific trial they were in or talk about the drug that they maybe did or didn't take in a trial, but they are going to talk to you about their participation. So Hope.
Thank you, Michelle. And unfortunately, just one of our panelists couldn't be here to join us live today. So we have a pre-recorded video from one of them. So I am going to pull that up. I just want to make sure I have my sound on so you can all hear it really well. So this video is my discussion with Christy, Gonzales, and AJ, and they are going to introduce themselves. But we did have a little bit of a technological issue. So AJ and Christy are on audio only, but I hope you'll enjoy their perspectives, and we'll pick up the discussion with Suzanne, our next panelist, in just a few minutes. Hi, AJ and Christy. Thank you for joining us. Can you start by introducing yourselves and telling us a little bit about what your day looks like?
Of course. I am Christy Gonzales. I'm mom to
Antonio Gonzales.
And AJ, how old are you?
I'm 12,
AJ's 12 years old. What grade are you in?
7.
7th grade. And what is your favorite subject in school?
Reading.
Reading is his favorite subject. Do you do anything fun outside of school?
Play sports.
AJ plays some sports outside of school. What do you play?
I play sled hockey.
And AJ is part of a disabled sled hockey team.
Oh, so you are a busy guy. You've got your school days and your weekend plans. AJ, can you tell us where you're from?
I am from Delmar, New Jersey.
Awesome. And then what do you remember, AJ? How old were you when you started participating in clinical trials?
I believe I was 6.
He's correct. Yeah, 6 years old.
Thank you. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us today and sharing your experience. So AJ, we're really curious to know about what your motivation to participate in clinical trials. Where does that come from?
Probably like knowing that if like the clinical trial goes good, like other people could like have medicine without trying.
So Christy, maybe you can weigh in on this next question. So what factors impacted your and AJ's decisions to participate in the clinical trials?
I think we really wanted something that we knew some information about. And you know, when AJ's first clinical trial, we traveled. This clinical trial was closer to home, so with him being older and in middle school, that was really important to us, being close. That way we could get him to school and the less time missing from school.
Yeah, that is obviously an important factor to consider. How did you do your own research? Did you get information from your FOP medical expert that you consult with? Did you do some of your own digging online? What were your main sources of sort of information seeking?
So we're always paying attention to the IFOPA website. I think the emails that come out about what's new and new clinical trials, we always consult our FOP expert just to kind of get their feel if there's any information that we're missing, and then clinicaltrials.gov.
Right. And okay, one more question for you both. So what do you think is important to know about participating in clinical trials? What would you tell someone, AJ, who's considering it? Maybe they're not sure if they want to participate or not. What do you think is important for them to know?
The research.
So AJ thinks that the research is really important. AJ's really into science right now. So just researching what trials there are. For AJ, it's about how many, what type of drug he would receive, if it's pills, how many pills it would be. I think so, right? Sometimes it's about blood draws. How many times would his blood have to be drawn? Would it be maybe a urine test, maybe a saliva test? What type of testing comes along with that trial? AJ likes to know things up front. So, when we're always speaking to, maybe the clinical trial coordinator, those are the questions we're asking.
So it was wonderful to be able to incorporate a little of Kristi and AJ's voice into the discussion, but we have 5 other panelists who have joined us here today. So I'm going to start with Suzanne. So Suzanne, you can feel free to come on video and off mute. And I wanted to ask Suzanne if you could start by introducing yourself.
Hi, my name is Suzanne Hollywood. I am from New Jersey in the US, and I am mother to Joseph, who is currently 16, who has FOP.
Right. And can you tell us when or how old Joseph was when he started participating in clinical trials?
Joe was, he started in the natural history study when he was 9, but when he actually started in the clinical trial itself, he was 10.
And what does his day look like? Just a little bit of, outside of clinical trials, what does he do during the day, or what else is filling up his schedule?
Joe is currently a junior in high school, so he's involved in the school TV. Our school has a TV station, so the last 2 years he was a cameraman. This year he's taking his hand at talent, which will be doing interviews and on-camera stuff. He's also part of the concert orchestra. He plays cello. And he is in a gaming afternoon club, which I'm not really sure what that's about. It's called Role Playing Club. It has something to do with Dungeons and Dragons. He also takes piano lessons, and he takes private cello lessons weekly. So, and he's a gamer, so he always has something going on.
Yeah. And I think we heard that a little bit with AJ as well. Him and Joey in middle school and high school, they lead really busy lives. So it's so wonderful that they and you as a family make time to be involved in this aspect of FOP research. Can you talk a little bit about what Joey's motivation was, or what your motivation as a family was to participate in a clinical trial?
So, Joe was young when he went into clinical trial. For us, it was really important we were really upfront with him about it. And, what we explained to him was, being part of research is that the people that came before us, the FOPers, they were part of some type of research or some type of trials. And everyone's doing their part to move us forward, especially since this is something that's so rare. So even at 10 years old, he really bought into that, knowing how important it was. And then, as our motivation is, everyone knows what a devastating disease this is. He was 10 years old, and as a parent, you have a lot to weigh. But we felt we had to do something. When you see how long trials can last, or how long it'll take a medicine, to get approved, I felt it was really important that we were part of that journey. First of all, to do our part, but if a drug's going to work, I want to give him that opportunity to be on it.
And as Joe's gotten older, has he become more interested in knowing the specifics of his clinical trial? Do you feel like he's kind of grown into it as well as he's gotten older?
We're on a really good system with, something. It's because we've been, for 7 years now, 7 years, 6 or 7 years, so he's always he always wants to know what's going on. The day that Joe was diagnosed in 2011, I literally was preparing him for a day that we would have a clinical trial. So whether that was getting him to swallow pills, which, in the beginning was harder, but became easier. Drug trials, blood draws, which every kid has, like a needle phobia. These are things that we kind of worked on, and he was able to talk to other kids about it too. So he really owned being part of the trial, and he's proud of it. He tells people about it.
Well, and you should be very proud as his mom. And obviously you've put a lot of work in to help him be successful in that. So can you tell us a little bit about, when you're considering clinical trials, what are the factors you're thinking of, or what is your process like to make a decision to select a trial?
So, first of all, we're going to talk to the clinicians. We're going to speak to, Dr. Kaplan and Dr. Shao. We have one on the East Coast, one on the West Coast. That's number one. We keep, same thing as what Kristi had said, we keep a really close eye on the IFOP website of what is happening and where, and send you to the to the government website also. My husband is the one who kind of processes all of the medical things. And what we really, you have to seriously consider and weigh what the benefit to, you have to weigh the benefit to what the safety factor could be. It's a very personal decision. When we thought about it, we really felt that, we needed to do something. We had to take the chance to do something. We very closely followed, when we talked to the trial team, we very closely followed Joe for side effects and whatnot. But you just really got to, need to make sure that you know as much as you can about what you're getting into, and really trust the people that you're going to be reporting to. And in that case, we're very fortunate. We had a great team. Have a great team.
That is great advice, I think, to end on. Do you have anything else, Suzanne, you want to add?
Something, especially with younger kids, I know it's scary. It is scary because, you're making these decisions that's going to affect them. Try to learn as much as you can. But I also think that doing something is better than waiting and doing nothing, especially with FOP being so unpredictable. You don't know what's going to happen in that waiting period.
Well, thank you for bringing sharing that perspective and bringing us through to, we kind of started with AJ, who said he started when he was 6. And now we talked about Joey, who's in high school, or Joseph, who's in high school. And next we are going to be hearing from Manuel. So Manuel, if you want to join us on video, can you start just by introducing yourself?
Yes. Hello, I'm Manuel. I'm 26 years old. I'm from Argentina. I'm studying mathematics in university, kind of finishing.
That is an exciting point of life to be at. Finishing university is a big accomplishment. So thanks for joining us, Manuel, today, despite I know what is a very busy schedule. Can you start by sharing a little bit of what compelled you to learn about clinical trials and ultimately decide to participate in a clinical trial?
Well, I think that the main point of the clinical trial is advancing research and getting closer to the day that we can say that we have a cure. So that's really my main point. There were also side benefits, like having an experimental drug. Maybe it's better than the daily medication, even with the possibility that you are getting a placebo, but maybe you are getting a better drug.
What about
Yeah.
access to, I know you had shared in our conversations that, you know, without participating in a clinical trial, you see your local physician, but what was the value to you in having more regular or visits with different physicians outside of just your local care provider?
Well, yes, in a trial, periodically they make a bunch of tests on you, and you are being looked by a lot of doctors, so you can get a very close following on how your health, how your body is doing, and that's not even just on progression of FOP. Maybe they can see other health issues that you may have. That's help too.
I've noticed a lot of adults with FOP are very much information seekers. They want to keep very close track of their health and how different you know, organs or things are doing. And so that's a great point to bring up, that there's a lot of information that you gain also from being a participant in these clinical trials. Can you talk about the factors then that impacted you? Obviously had a lot of the motivation to participate, but what were the factors that impacted your decision about which trial you would ultimately join?
Well, on this trial I participated in, it was in my city, and well, very close. So the visits were an easy thing. It's not that it was maybe an 8-hour drive, or that I had to sleep overnight and stuff. Hell. So that was a very big point in favor of participating. Then I, my parents, read and well talked with the investigator on the side effects, the possible side effects, and how intense perhaps they could be, to get an idea. And all of that sounded like a good deal. And also very big was the assurance that I could stop at any time for whatever reason. The only thing that I expected to use that was if the side effects were very intense, but maybe if the with some other people, the impact of daily life or whatever, they can just get out.
I know in our conversations you've talked about, or I think this is just an important thing to reiterate for people, that there's no cost to participate in a clinical trial. So you don't pay anything, but it does cost your time to
Yes.
be able to participate. And so as a student in university, you know, it was great to hear how you really weighed that, the benefit of giving up your time and how much time you could share to be a part of this. So, so what do you think? You've obviously thought this process through very thoroughly. What do you think is important for people to know about participating in clinical trials?
Well, I suppose you already know the dessert of all this, that having the cure eventually, like helping get a cure, but you aren't just like a patient, like you patiently wait for something. The trial, you have to be active in some sense. You need to be very aware, very conscious on your body and new symptoms, new sensations, new whatever happens, and you have to report it. even if you are absolutely sure it has nothing to do with the drug, you have to report it because maybe it is. Maybe it's a new side effect that you don't know about. And the goal of the trial is to gain knowledge on FOP and the drugs. And some of that is because of studies they make with machines, blood tests, X-rays, but other parts of the knowledge you have to provide. You have to answer questions. You have to talk about all these things.
Yeah, it is certainly a very, I think, meaningful opportunity for people to be engaged. If you're remotely interested in research or science at all, I think the opportunity to be in a clinical trial and be that active voice that you're talking about is really empowering. So thank you for highlighting that point, Manuel. Is there anything else you want to add? We are going to hear from Julie next. So, Julie, if you want to come off of video and unmute. Oh, we're having a little bit of trouble getting in touch or getting through to Julie. Isabella. Oh, there she is. Okay, great. You are muted. So if you can just unmute.
Sorry.
No worries. And if you want to start by introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about your life, that'd be great.
Yeah, I'm Julie. I'm 27 years old and live in Denmark. I also go to the university where I study nutrition and health. So yeah, it's a daily part of my life. In relation to FOP, I'm a part of the Scandinavian organization and a part of the IPC, the International President Counseling in the organization. Yeah.
Yeah, so you're not only very busy in your personal life with school and the passions you're pursuing there, but also in giving back to the FOP community, which we're so grateful for. And I love having the opportunity to work with you as a part of the International President's Council. So thank you for joining us today. And I'd love to hear more, and I know the rest of our attendees would as well, about sort of how you came to pursue your interest in clinical trials. What was your motivation, and where did your interest come from?
Actually, I think that the most part of the interest is from my childhood and what is called when I go to doctors, and I have always tried new and unsure medications because we only have the prednisone to use when we have a flare. So it wasn't that difficult or different for me to attend. So when my doctor told me that there was this trial and he thought that it could be a good idea for me to attend, it wasn't a question about why I should attend, but more how I could attend and when. So yeah, it was not that difficult. And one of the most or the biggest why I have is that it's not only me, but the whole organization and all the new people with FOP I could help. So, yeah.
And I know we heard Michelle say at the beginning that clinical trials are not a treatment, they are research. Yeah. But for you, it was really, we have prednisone, but is there anything else out there that could potentially help you, or that you could try to manage that? And it was really wanting to pursue and look elsewhere for something like that. So that's really interesting. And can you tell us then how, what were the factors you considered as you were making that decision about participating in that specific trial?
Yeah, one of the factors was that because of my FOP, I can fly. So it was necessary that I could drive to the location. We haven't one nearby, so I have a drive about 8 to 10 hours every way. So it's a long drive, but it was an important factor. I also think that it was important that I could communicate with the doctors and the first half of my education was in English, so it was much more easy to communicate because I've already knew a lot of the words and what it meant and how to communicate. So yeah, I think I haven't that many questions. It was just something I needed to do.
Yeah, but you did, I think, raise a really important point that I know a lot of our adult community members can relate to, which is that airline travel was not an option for you. And so with the distance, that 8 to 10 hours, that is a big, we talked about with Manuel how time is important. It's something to be valued. So how, that 8 to 10 hour drive, I know it wasn't easy, but how did you really shift your perspective to make the most of this opportunity and to stay engaged?
I think I always look at the trip, like a trip or a holiday, and I always have 2 people with me. Most of the time it's my caregivers and sometimes it's family. So we always have a nice trip with, as we talked about, with a lot of snacks, and we see something on the way, or go in the city and experience something new, or try new food, or just get it more than just a visit at the hospital.
Yeah, I think that's an incredible power that you have to be able to shift, because we've heard from several people that the travel can be challenging, and those are factors that weigh in on which trial people select. But at the end of the day, if you personally can put a spin on it where you make it like a fun getaway, I think is how you've kind of referred to it in our conversations as well, that can be a great tool for you to find other meaning in it besides just the 8 to 10 hour drive. And you mentioned that you have your caregivers who travel with you. So that's a great factor then to mention, or I think just highlight that you have that support that was able to go with you. And I know we also discussed that you were able to be really open with your professors at school, and that they were really understanding. So how did you navigate that with them? Being in classes and obviously having to miss some time. How did you address that with your school faculty?
It haven't been that difficult, actually. I just said I need to go, so
It's wonderful to hear that they were so supportive of you and that as well. So what would you tell other people, again, sort of the question we went through with Manuel, who are considering participating in a clinical trial? What is your insight to share with them?
I think that for me, it has been a great experience, not only because I'm experiencing a new way to investigate the disease and the whole team at the clinical trial, but also I know some of the people in the trial. So we always say hey to each other when we are at the apartment at the same time. And one of the participants, we got out for ice cream last year. So we have this community about it, and understand that it's we can talk about that it's hard to get to the trial and participate in all the different things, but
And you even crossed the border to go into a different country.
Two actually.
to participate. So if you're able to do that, and I know you had said that in COVID it was a little more challenging, but now that has been a little bit more in the past, that really doesn't pose much of a barrier to you at all either. So crossing the borders to be a part of FOP community, both research and then connect with other adults with FOP there.
And all the doctors.
Sounds like an incredible experience. So thank you so much for sharing that, Julie. We are next going to hear from Isabella. So hi, Isabella. I'm just going to spotlight you so everyone can see you. And do you want to start by introducing yourself?
Yes, of course. My name is Isabella. I'm 25 years old. I live in Parma, Italy, and I'm a student. I'm a member of the FOP Italia board, and my father is the vice president of FOP Italia. I was the first person in the world to participate in phase 2 of the clinical trial.
So that is an exciting experience. And I know with that, you experience, there were some, just that it took time for the hospital you were at to get ready and for you to officially start the trial once you had enrolled. And how did you handle that? We talked about that there's some stress that comes with that. So how did you handle, being the first person to be enrolled in that trial and sort of the delays, a little bit of delay that inevitably comes with that? How did you handle that?
I was looking forward to starting this experience, so this delay really annoyed me. During the beginning of this journey, I was really anxious and nervous because it was new things for me. It was really difficult to stay patient, but I overcame my fears, thinking that I was doing the right things for me, but also for all the other patients that were children at the time and could have participated in the clinical trials.
Yeah, I think that was one of our goals with this panel, was definitely to bring a very real life perspective. We didn't want to make it seem like all sunshine and roses, or just put this perfect picture on everything. And what I loved in the discussions with Manuel and Julie and Suzanne and Christy and you, Isabella, is that you're able to share this resilience that you have, and just that there are challenges that come, but your perspective to just really, they say patience is a virtue, and you were able to stay patient and just focus on why this was important to you until you could participate. So can you talk a little bit more about that motivation? Like, why was it so hard? Why were you so excited to participate?
Well, Italy has a lot of children with FOP who couldn't participate in clinical trials at the time, so I felt the responsibility to take action and to participate also for them, hoping that good things will come. And I also enroll myself because I hope it will bring me benefits.
Yeah, it's a very selfless perspective and something that's really admirable. So thank you, Isabella, for doing that, especially with that motivation. Can you share a little bit more about then, I know you didn't make this decision lightly, that you put a lot of thought and research into it. So what did that stage of the process look like? Who did you reach out to, and what did you do to really feel comfortable and excited to move forward?
Well, the first things I did was asking myself if I would be able to participate, considering the effort, both physical and mental, that the trial carried. Then I have to decide which trial was ideal for me, and I discussed with the national FOP expert, who provide me additional reading and information about trial options. During this process, I also discussed it with my family and valued the option of trusted sources and people near me that are respected, like my sister, who was studying medicine at the time. Then I had to consider the logistics, including the traveling, because the hospital was a 2-hour drive from my house, so I had to find someone who can come with me every time. My father and my mother were able to take 2 days off every month to come with me at the hospital. I was a student at the time, so I also have to consider that the time off that I have to take during the lessons. I talked with my professor and sorted it out. My classmates were so kind to pass me the notes of the class that I missed.
That's great. This support system, I love hearing about all the different members of our individual communities that are kind of rallying around them, and to hear that your fellow classmates were there to support you in this is really wonderful. So if you could leave everyone with a thought about, we know it's certainly not the simplest or easiest thing. You have a very busy life, and there are a lot of factors that went into that decision, but why, if you can leave anyone with, I guess, a closing thought about why you think it's important, or what they should consider about clinical trial opportunities.
Yeah, we are putting so much work and effort into raising money for research, and it will be a pity that no one tried the treatment that the research have found. I know it's hard and challenging, but it's fundamental. It's a fundamental part if you want to find a cure for FOP.
Thank you. Bringing in the economical perspective, which is something that we haven't really talked about, but thank you, Isabella. So last but certainly not least, Paulina has joined us, and she is in Mexico with vacation with her family. So even though she's originally from the US, she's joining us from Mexico. And thanks for making time for us, Paulina. Do you want to start while you're away on your trip? Do you want to start by introducing yourself?
Yes. Hello, everyone. My name is Paulina Gutierrez. I'm 27 years old. I'm from Mexico, but I reside in Bowman, California, in the US. Things about myself is that I love traveling to visit my family from Mexico. And also I like to look for places that are wheelchair accessible. And I'm a founder of a Spanish speaking group support.
Oh, you cut out just a little bit, Paulina, but you, I know what you were saying, so I'll kind of reiterate for everyone that you founded IFOPers Latinos, which is a support group for Spanish-speaking members of the FOP community. So again, very involved in the FOP community, as well as lots of things personally that are filling up your days. And so, with so many things on your plate, what was your motivation, or why did you reach out and want to learn more about clinical trials?
It is because to help the doctors know more about FOP.
Yeah, and
help my community to benefit as a whole.
Very good. So it was the benefit to the FOP community as a whole, and you wanted to do everything you could to support the researchers and doctors who are working sort of behind the scenes to do that. So what were the factors then that you considered as you were selecting a clinical trial?
I did have three factors decisions to participate as per to my connected to my primary doctor care provider. The second one was 45 minutes to 1 hour drive to 1 hour airplane versus air hours car ride. But the primary option was the air travel science. Getting the airport and airplane seating is not an issue for me yet. The second one was the third one, was that my parents' work couldn't go with me. So after a little over 2 months, the coordinator contact me and they provide me a caregiver to support me, and my parents can travel with me.
Yeah, so I was just going to reiterate a few points. The travel method was really important to you, and you are able to go by airplane. So that 45-minute trip, by plane was something that you felt was very manageable, as opposed to if you had to drive, it would have been, you said 8 hours, which for you, was a significant barrier. So that travel logistic weighed in, but then also the caregiver support that you were able to receive from the study to be able to participate. And can you talk a little bit more about, again, was that a seamless transition to have the caregiver, the first caregiver that you met, was it perfect, or did you have to kind of navigate that as well? Because it's a big change to have usually your home and mom and dad are helping you, but when you're traveling to a new city with someone who you haven't previously worked for, how did you navigate that?
The first caregiver, it wasn't a good fit, so they didn't make me feel respect. So I had to communicate it with my coordinator, and they were able to get another caregiver, and this caregiver, I feel like is more helpful and respectful than the other one.
Yeah, so you've had her for multiple visits now. And that's really worked out well. And your mom is able to go when she can get off work. She's traveled with you, but on the other times when she's not, you've had this caregiver who's been able to kind of go in her place. And when you told me about that experience, Paulina, I thought that was a really wonderful example of advocating for yourself, because I know those conversations can be difficult with your doctor or the study coordinator to say, oh, this isn't the best fit with this caregiver. But the fact that you were able to have the courage or confidence to speak up and convey that is a really great example of advocating for your needs. And now you have a better solution in place. So thank you for sharing. I think, you know, we know that it's not all a smooth road. Sometimes we hit bumps, and that was a great real life example to share with everyone. So do you want to say anything else about what you think is important for people to know, or what you would tell someone who's maybe considering participating in a clinical trial?
I think
Oh, go ahead, Paulina.
I think it's important I think it is important to participate because it's an opportunity to the patients and the doctors to get to know more about FOP.
Great. Well, thank you, Paulina, for joining us. And we are done with our panel discussion. So I am going to hand it back over to Michelle. I think she has a few more slides to go through, and then we are going to, I'm sure you all have questions for these amazing speakers, so we're going to get to those as well.
Okay, so we're going to talk just for a few minutes here about some of the resources that are available to you as part of the trial. So let me get the screen share going back again. So, you know, we've talked about that there are a lot of clinical trials for FOP, and that can be a little confusing. It can be a lot of information to sort through. So the IFOPA has a brand new resource, a trial locations map. So when you go to this URL here, and again, this will be posted in YouTube after the webinar, you come here and you'll see this large map. And then you can use the zoom buttons to make this map smaller or larger. If you live, let's say in this instance, I live in Africa. Oh, let me back up and say one thing. There is a list, it's actually going to it, which I didn't want to do right now. You can actually, there is an alphabetical list of countries at the bottom of the map. So you can actually scroll through a list if that's easier for you to navigate. Or you can click on, maybe I live in South Africa, I want to click on that button, and then you get more information about, okay, in South Africa, it said there were 2 sites, here they are, and when I click on the blue flag, it will tell me which trial this is. So this is the trial at the Red Cross Children's Hospital, it's the trial from Insight, and then when I click on the blue link, it actually takes me straight to clinicaltrials.gov to get the information. So that is a new resource that's available to you to help find the trials in your area. There are trials, not every trial is recruiting. It will say recruiting, not yet recruiting, or active, not recruiting, those statuses we talked about earlier. We also, as I mentioned, have a new clinical trial alert. That's an email that you can sign up for. So here's the URL to sign up for that again. We'll be sending that out as well. There is also a new glossary, which we've talked about. You just go to ifopa.org/glossary. There's a glossary of terms on FOP research, FOP biology, and also if you just check this box, you'll see anything related to clinical studies and trials. So if there's something that you don't understand, don't hesitate to come here and look for the question. If there's something that you don't see, please email us. And we will look to get you an answer and get it added to the glossary. There are also frequently asked questions. So if you go to the website to what is FOP, scroll down to FOP FAQ, you will see that there's some generic questions about FOP, but then also drug development and clinical trials. So when you click that, you will see the sampling of questions that are here. And then when you click on it, it gives you your answer. We also have a section of the website, ifopa.org/about, clinical-trials. You will find videos on that site. You will find decision-making resources. This is an example of one that's been provided by PRA Health Sciences. How do you decide between different trials? You will find trial details. And then you're also going to find a list of studies where you don't take a drug, like the FOP registry. This is a great example of what the trial page looks like on the IFOPA's website. So this is an example from the Optima trial. It has the eligibility criteria, study design, a little bit more about the drug, and then it has a list of the participating clinical trial sites with information about who the principal investigator is, and then you can actually email the principal investigator from this link. We also on YouTube have both a playlist for clinical studies and trials, and then we also have our Spanish playlist where anything that is available in Spanish related to clinical studies and trials will be posted. So there's lots of videos and resources for you to use here, and that's where this webinar will be posted after today. It'll take probably 48 hours for us to get it up, but it will be posted on our YouTube channel. Okay, so we're going to take a quick pause here, and we are going to address the questions that have been coming in.
And if panelists, if you want to go ahead and turn on your video, I know there's some questions for you all. So the first one and this one is kind of specific, but if you can just say in, general terms, how long did it take for you? So say you made that initial outreach to the time that you had your first visit, and that can be different for everyone. So I want our attendees to know that this answer may not be your experience because it will vary, but I think to give people some sense of time, how long was it between your initial outreach to be a participant and your first visit? And that may have been a while ago, so I might have to rack your brains for it. But if you can give a general idea, that'd be great.
Our turnaround time was quick. When we had already been in the natural history study, when they told us about the next part of this, the next trial that was coming up, I want to say within weeks, probably faster than that. It was a while ago, but our turnaround time was really quick. And once I think they know you're interested in it and you have all the information, things move pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else remember or want to share?
Yeah, I can also share mine. For me, it took 1.5 years because of the COVID situation. But when they get allowed to start, it took also a couple of weeks from I got noticed, so I could visit them the first time.
Right.
So pretty quick.
Yeah, COVID, I think, threw a wrench in a lot of different plans. So we have to account for a little bit of extra time. Isabella, what about you?
6 months, I think.
Yeah. And you mentioned there were some delays as the first participant. So definitely something to keep in mind, but thank you. So does anyone want to share, what is your favorite and least favorite part of the clinical trial experience? And that may be something that just, again, for people to know, varies very much based on personality. And
I think favorite things is the connection with the nurses and the doctor in the hospital. Least favorite is the traveling.
Yeah.
I think for Joe,
go ahead.
Sorry. For Joe, probably the least favorite would be probably still to this day blood draws, even though he's great at it. The best part about it for him, I think it really gives him, it's given him his own voice with, with FOP. And besides that, I think, as Julie said, every visit we do something fun. We make something memorable. And so we remember each visit, not per se for the hospital visit, but for what we did that time. So we always look to do something memorable.
Yeah. Right. And I was going to say, Suzanne, you had mentioned you did a lot of sort of prep with Joseph to help him succeed in blood draws. The IFOPA also has several resources that we can direct you to that are specific to supporting children through medical procedures, and some that are specifically just for blood draws. But I'm curious to know, is there any one specific thing that you did, Suzanne, that you feel like really helped him?
So Joe is one of those people, same thing, wants to know exactly what's going on, what's going to happen. And so, regardless of how many times we just kind of kept reassuring him, we kept very calm about it. We made sure during the blood draws, if he had to take a break, we would. And not quite proud to say there was a lot of bribing going on. He cashed out with a lot of gift cards. He was 10 and he saw the light at the end of the tunnel, and it kind of worked. But from a perspective, we made sure there was no surprises, kind of like, Joe, this is what it's going to feel like. It's scarier than the actual thing. Mm-hmm. And I think every time they pricked him, you could actually see him relax, because he's like, oh. But as I said, we started talking about it. We started talking about it really early. Like, this is what's going to happen. And, we'll be right there. So,
yeah. And
I think I was lucky.
Well, we heard from AJ or from Kristi and AJ as well, that AJ really wants to know the specifics of, how many tests, what type of test. And the child life specialist in me is just going to do a little plug that most kids, depending on their coping styles, are very much information seekers. And sometimes their imagination, the unknown, is scarier than the reality. So being a great just advocate for Joseph and giving him the information at a level that he can digest, which can be hard, but I'm just walking him through it, giving him the information, the amount of information he needed to feel comfortable, is such a great example, Suzanne, of being a wonderful advocate.
And at any time we went to any appointment and they wanted us to donate blood as a parent, we would always go first, so he could see exactly what was going on.
Wow. That is incredible. Does anyone else have questions, or does anyone else want to chime in with maybe what the highlight of their experience participating in clinical trials? Or we've covered a lot of challenges. That was something we wanted to be very, I think, transparent about, was sharing, how people have navigated different challenges within the process. But okay, well, I think that is all the questions I have in our Q&A. So Michelle, is there anything that you wanted to say?
Yeah, there was a couple other questions that were submitted in advance that I just wanted to touch on. Someone asked in the chat about whether these trials are US only or global. So I hope we've addressed that and shown you tools like the clinical trial map so that you can find where the trials are near you. We did have a question about, someone asked, why can't I participate in the trials if my FOP is more advanced? So in the trials, they have to tell the regulators what are they trying to gauge. And in FOP, one of the things they're trying to gauge to be able to show that their drug works is how much bone is grown. So how much heterotopic bone is grown. If you already are so severely advanced with FOP and have lots and lots of bone, it is going to be harder to determine whether or not the drug is working. And so that's why, in what we talked about earlier, the exclusion criteria, sometimes you might see that if your FOP is really advanced, that you can't participate. So there are, from time to time, there are surveys that the IFOPA sends out. There's also the FOP registry. Those are all what are called observational studies. That means they are studies that are important to FOP research, for which you don't have to take a drug. And so if you're not able to participate in a trial, or maybe you have a young child and they have not really started having FOP symptoms, but they're diagnosed, all of those, especially the FOP registry, are really important tools and things that you can start doing immediately. So I hope that when those information comes out about those, that you will definitely consider those as well. There were also 2 questions in the Q&A that we addressed. One was about that many of the tablets might be hard for people to take because of the locked jaw. Only one of the trials has an intravenous, the IV drug. And so for some of these trials, you can crush the pill and put it like in a smoothie or yogurt. So that is something you want to ask the principal investigator about when you're making your decisions. And then there was another question about if successful, when will Regeneron's garetosmab come to market? So first, the trial has to enroll the number of patients that are required, whether that's 20 or 60 or 66 or 98. Once the last patient gets in, they must complete the trial. And for example, in the garetosmab trial, it's about 21 months that the trial lasts. Once the trial is finished, then they have to take all of the data and analyze all of the data to be able to determine, was it safe and was it effective, and are the risks worth the benefits? So then they put that package together and then they file, you'll find it in the glossary, the new drug application, where they ask the regulators to approve it for FOP. So I would say we're probably still, even though the Regeneron trial is a phase 3, it's the one that's furthest along at this point, we're probably still several years before that would be able to be approved. And remember that that trial is in adults, it's not in children at this point. And so it's likely that that would just be able to be approved for adults at this point. So. Okay, I don't think there's any other questions. Someone did ask earlier, can people over 30 participate? And so you just want to look at the inclusion-exclusion criteria. It might not be about the age, but more about your FOP progression or any other conditions that you might have. Let me just check the chat, make sure there was nothing else in the chat. I've got just 2 last slides that I just wanted to share with you as we wrap up today. So let me get to that. So we talked about the unique position of the FOP community. That's what we opened with today. We talked about the fact that clinical trials are not proven treatments. They have the potential to become treatments if they're proved to be effective and safe, and they have to be both. So you have tools as a person enrolling in a trial. You have your principal investigator and you have the informed consent to help you determine if you are comfortable participating in a trial. The other thing that we know is that clinical trials are the only path to an approved treatment. There is no way to get a drug developed for a disease without going through the clinical trial process. And they have to go through the process that was set out when they launched the trial. So if they say that they need 20 people, 60 people, 66 people, 98 people, that means that's how many people we have to get enrolled in a trial and then participate in that trial and see it through to see if the drug is both effective and safe. So if we look at the 4 trials that we've talked about today that are looking to enroll, that means that from around the world, we need 244 people with FOP to participate. We just remind you of this number because what we hope is that each person with FOP that might be eligible for a trial would consider whether or not they want to participate. We've got a few guidelines on here. So one thing, again, to remember, we've talked about repeatedly, trials aren't treatments, but they're a way to contribute to finding treatments for both you and for future generations. I think, even AJ, who's, 12 years old, is talking about he's doing it because he knows that there are kids that aren't even 12 that can't participate. So he's participating for them. The other thing, and I think someone else mentioned this, is that trials can be a way to receive routine care from an FOP expert. The people that are running these trials know a lot about FOP, and so you're going to see them and talk with them on a more routine basis. So it's a way to get, really good routine care from an expert. I think the other thing that's important to remember is you should always talk to your doctor about whether or not you're eligible. We don't want you to just assume, oh, there's no way that I could participate in that trial. Look at the trial, talk with your doctor, click the links on the website and reach out to the principal investigator and see if that's an option. Don't assume that you're not eligible. And if you aren't eligible, the FOP registry is something every person with FOP can participate in that still contributes to research and drug development. So, and as we just said, the clinical trials are the only path to an approved treatment. We can't afford to not fill these trials. So we really hope that you explore the options that are made available to this community. We're grateful to the pharmaceutical companies who are going to a lot of, they're investing a lot, and they're going to a lot of risk themselves in putting these trials out for our community. And so we're grateful for the work that we're doing. We're grateful for the principal investigators and the study coordinators that are offering these trials. And we want you to have an opportunity to investigate everything that might be open to you. So how do you do that? You sign up for the clinical trial alerts. You watch our social media for the announcements. This fall at the IFOPA's Family Gathering, which is November 16th through 18th, you can attend in person in Dallas or virtually. There is a session on Sojonos. There's also Dr. Richard Keene, who's running all of the clinical trials. We'll be doing a session on the clinical trials. There will be people there from the pharmaceutical companies to also address questions. There's much more at the Family Gathering, but those are the ones that are related to drug development. So we hope that you'll register for the Family Gathering, either in person or virtually. And then if you have questions, you can always reach out to the IFOPA. If it's a frequently asked question maybe you feel like that needs to be addressed, if it's a glossary term you want added, if you just have a general question about the trials, we are glad to be here and to be a navigator helping you navigate this incredible opportunity that our community has. So thank you for spending time with us today. Thank you for, I feel like all of you that are participating in clinical trials, the people that are on with us today, and those of you behind the scenes that are not on the panel today, but that are participating or have participated. You are heroes in the FOP community because you have stepped forward, you've raised your hand, you've said, I am willing to do this for me and for future generations. And so we'll never get there without you. So thank you for your time today and for considering participating in clinical trials.
I just wanted to add real quickly, I know Suzanne had to roll off, but Paulina, Manuel, Isabella, and Julie, thank you for taking the information, the resources we had, and really bringing it to the next level with your perspective. It was such an invaluable experience to hear from you directly. So thank you for joining us today.